Hi, friends. Welcome back to State of the Union. I'm your host, Josh Horton. Today, I'm talking with designer and head letterer Dan Lee. You might know him as Dan Drawn Words on Instagram, where he fills your feed with human imperfect lettering and all the little pencil lines and guides to prove that a real person made the work. We walk through how Dan went from a chemical engineering degree and a safe path at Drexel to a full-body panic about that future, to brute forcing his way into design, finding the lettering community online, and eventually landing in Sheridan, Wyoming, where his work literally lives on the walls of his town. We talk about delusion as a creative skill, leaving places better than you found them, and what it looks like to build a life shaped by craft instead of the algorithm. We also get into AI, taste, and mass consumption, why so much of what we see feels plastic, why convenience keeps eating real creativity, and why hand lettering and other slow human crafts still matter in a world that wants everything instant and average. If you're trying to pivot out of a stable career into creative work, if you're worn out by platforms and hungry for something real, or if you just need a push to invest in your own city and community, this one's for you. Before we dive in, a quick invite. The State of the Union podcast is powered by listeners like you. There are no sponsors, just the conviction to keep these conversations alive and a lot of editing hours. If this podcast helps you, consider chipping in a few bucks a month to support the show. Even the cost of one coffee a week makes a difference and helps us keep these episodes ad-free and coming regularly. You can support the podcast at creativeworks.co/podcast. The link is in the show notes. Let's get into it. Where do we find you today?
I am reporting to you live from my office in Sheridan, Wyoming, where we are getting the first flakes of snow on a very cold day.
I'm super glad to be talking with you. I was just really intrigued, honestly, by kind of your creative journey and your creative path. I don't think many people have the same story, but maybe similar paths and similar trajectories. What kind of kid did you grow up like? What were you into? What did you do?
Gosh, so I feel it's one of those funny questions where your self-perception versus what you have been told over the years, like, oh, no, this is how you were, versus like, this is what I thought it was. I'll get into that in a second, but I think the thing that I thought I was and that everyone knew I was that was aligned was art kid. Like I was just the consummate art kid from the get-go, just drawing, making things, writing little comic books, crafts, messes, all of the above. I remember printing out, like as soon as we could do like word processing, badge of honor as a millennial to have used Windows 95 when it was brand new.
Nice, yeah.
Printing out fonts, like typing things as fonts, printing them out, and then copying it on another sheet of paper just to see if I could match that kind of like titling energy, because I was so
nice,
which is a great like harbinger, I guess, of what my life was going to become in the future.
Sure.
But where it diverged, I always thought that I was kind of like the quiet, shy kid. And I was actually pretty gregarious and had to get disciplined a lot by like teachers and authority figures for talking too much. So there's like
me.
like, I wonder if I was creative. So, I mean, I had a wonderful childhood of like having all of those creative impulses met by my parents, encouraged by my parents, and they just had all these art supplies around the house. My mom homeschooled us for a number of years, and so much of our learning was like somehow craft involved, being able to put together stuff for our evaluations that we would have at the end of the year. A lot of our projects were like arts and crafts. So it was like, twist my arm, guys. I went to a private school for, I think first grade. And the story I remember from that the most is my teacher telling my parents, like, your son is a little printer. Like he has incredible penmanship. And when they shared that praise with me, I thought it was a really funny, like inside joke for myself, because whenever we had to do, the letters and stuff, I just felt like I got time to draw. So it was like drawing time the whole time.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, we get to, yeah, exactly. And so again, I think that's really just carried through in life. So sort of an unstoppable creative force, even when everything else was not necessarily art focused. Like when I was really leaning into my studies through middle school and high school, the art just found a way. And I always found a way to be doing that. And that carried on through, yeah, till like after high school, looking at careers, graduated in 2009. So if you're tracking with world events, that was like prime post recession.
Yeah.
Like as a young person about to enter the next stage of education, thinking about my professional life, the prevailing conventional wisdom was find something technical, find something that you're going to be guaranteed to get a job. Art is nice, but I think the phrase that was told to me specifically was find a profession to support your passion. And they meant that mostly to be like something that isn't your passion, that is like reliable, that is tried and true, that has a corporate ladder, so that then you can go and do your fun little art things on the side.
The side, yeah, for sure.
And I was like, yeah, I have a tendency in my personality. It's a competing forces of wanting to be very secure and have all the answers, and then also the chaos side of, I think they call it in the Enneagram, like the counterphobic 6, where it's like, if I'm scared of it, I should probably be running towards it and just getting it out of the way, like see what's out there. And so with these forces in tension, I think what won out at the time was, no, let's be safe. Let's be secure. The world is crazy. I need to get a stable job. I think what I didn't realize was that the narrative of like the world is crazy and you need to get a stable job wasn't accounting for the fact that because the world was crazy, all the stable jobs were becoming unstable jobs. And thankfully, I didn't have to taste of that within the technical world. But I feel like we've seen, even in the past 10, 15 years since that time period for me, all these strong industries that just have been going through all kinds of layoffs, all kinds of new instabilities that, like, looking back, I'm like, there was no guarantee even then. Like, I could have sold myself on this narrative and there wouldn't really have been that same kind of security that I was hoping for. But that didn't happen. And so the way that that didn't happen, I went and applied to engineering schools, because that's the thing, you know, that's stable.
Yep.
I got a really good scholarship to Drexel University, which was like golden handcuffs. And I mean that in the most positive way. No hate to Drexel. I had a fantastic education there. But that sense of like, okay, if I got this nice scholarship, I probably shouldn't mess with a good thing. So I got in for chemical engineering. The way that worked was in high school, I kind of spun a wheel of which science do I hate the least, landed on chemistry, and then tagged engineering to the end of it and said, that's what I'm going to go for.
That's what I'll do, yeah.
A little knowing how abstract of a curriculum that is compared to something, you know, like architectural engineering or civil or mechanical, where the crossover between, say, like an artistic approach and then coming up with something physical, there's a lot more crossover there. Chemical, you're talking about flow diagrams and imagining if we were to take a chemical process and scale it up by 500 times, what are the chemical changes that hypothetically are going to happen? And so there's very little, like, you can't go and watch that in action. I mean, you can go see it like at a factory or a plant,
right? But
you can't, like, it's like not as tangible. And so you're spending most of your days in flowcharts and doing math. And so that was 5 years of chemical engineering at Drexel. And because I am a counterphobic masochist, I also tagged on the master's program, because they have
you told me this. I was like, holy.
They have a program where you can do your bachelor's and master's in 5 years, because with Drexel, because there's a co-op, a hands-on experience for 18 months as part of your curriculum, it's already a 5-year program. And if you want to tag on some graduate level courses and either like do a thesis or take enough 500 level credits, you can graduate with your bachelor's and master's at the same time.
Wow.
And also just sacrifice every ounce of sanity and social life,
Yes.
except for the people who are in those trenches with you, who became some of my closest friends.
You're graduating from Drexel
Mm-hmm.
with a chemical engineering degree and a master's degree,
Yeah.
right? And the other thing that how did you, I mean, I guess you're just a very disciplined person, but I got to in some weird way relate this to my career. I wanted to be a recording engineer, and I went to Belmont University. Um, and I thought music business was like, it's what's so funny about that. Like early 2000s, I thought music business was solid. And so I was like, creative business, what can I do? Okay, I'll get a music business degree, and then I'll focus it on recording engineering, because at the time I'd been playing drums and I thought of myself as a musician. I know a lot better drummers now, but I couldn't get my hands on the gear until I was a junior in that program. And so I immediately lost interest. Like there was this really nice studio complex at Belmont, and I couldn't get into it as a junior. I got into it I recorded some tracks there, but I couldn't get into it and work in that studio. So I was a junior. So I immediately lost interest.
That's crazy.
How did you stick with, again, you grew up hands-on, wanted to make things, do things, crafty. How did you stick with like knowing that the only way you're really going to you were, I guess, articulating the only way you could see this, I don't know if you said that there's math involved, but anyway, it's like you're thinking hypothetically or theoretically about chemical reactions and whatnot. The only way you could see them is kind of like at a big factory. How did you stick with kind of going hands off, or did you, maybe because of the math or maybe because of the book work, you kind of felt like that was the craft or the art of it? Like, how did you stick with that for 5 years, man? That's incredible question. Endurance in my mind.
I want to say that it's a skill, this larger skill that I think serves a lot of creatives and especially entrepreneurs and creative entrepreneurs, super especially, which is delusion. Just finding like specific helpful delusions that keep you going. And for me, it was this narrative. The first half of my college career was like, gosh, I don't love this. Have I made a mistake? I haven't even done this for 2.5 years though. So I should reevaluate at the halfway point, give this a fair shot, keep going.
Right.
I'll be able to evaluate then. I get to the halfway point. I'm thinking, wow, I really don't love this, but you know what? I'm halfway done. What more would it take to just finish this out? Just do another half, which I've also found, side note, as I've started doing CrossFit in the past few years, that same level of delusion is necessary for that kind of workout where you're just doing what I and I think some other people have called CrossFit math, where you're taking the reps and you're going like, oh, well, if I get to 5 more, then I'm halfway through the first round of 3, which gets me almost to the, you just start breaking it down into these manageable pieces. And I think that's so much
compartmentalizing.
Exactly.
It's an art form.
I can do this. I can do this for this much longer. So that's one side of it, was having these helpful delusions of like, well, I can chop it up and get through this much. And it's the thing where the delusion helps to craft the reality that you go through. And I call it delusion because you don't really have any proof. It's just like a belief that you give yourself, and then it becomes strong enough to then bring itself about. I think the other thing that happened was, hilariously, I just kept doing art too. So all the different organizations I was a part of in college and things on the side, stuff with my friends, stuff I would do at home in my own sketchbooks. I just kept drawing. I just kept doing graphic design things. Before I went into college, I had a summer job as a graphic designer for an engineering firm. So that was a funny,
that's awesome.
I could have read that to be like, you could maybe do this too in life. But I was so committed to no, you gotta do the smart thing. You gotta get that degree. And then you can draw forever.
Right.
So I think that's mainly how it worked. And then what you had mentioned about seeing the math as craft, I think that definitely helped too, because so much of it, I have a fondness. I wish I had some on me. There's this engineering paper. It's this yellow paper with like green print and like really faint grid outlines. And when I was doing my homework on that, just making it look kind of like an art piece became kind of like a therapeutic art
Right.
as engineering thing. And so
Yeah.
I really enjoyed just making that as beautiful as possible too. So just chasing the beauty and living in the delusion. I think that's how I did it.
I can just see how your mind is so articulate and primed for kind of like sharing your beliefs through hand type and hand lettering, right? Like so much of what you're articulating, I can read that on your Instagram feed, these nice little bite-sized edited chunks of
Yeah.
You graduate from Drexler. What's next?
So yeah, let's see. This is the part where it gets fuzzy because it just becomes chaos. And actually going home for Christmas this year, my dad helped to fill in some of the gaps of like things I'd forgotten. So I was like, this is great. I remember.
Where are your folks based? Your folks aren't in Wyoming, are they?
They're not, no. So Drexel is in Philadelphia, and my parents live just outside there in Chadsford. So I grew up in Chadsford. Okay. Then all three of my siblings and myself went to Drexel. We didn't do this on purpose, and we all did different engineerings. It's very funny. It's a very fun cocktail party fact. But yeah, most of the family lives out east. My little brother lives in San Francisco, but I was the first to pioneer moving out west when I came out here. So after school, I started applying for jobs. And one of the first ones that bit, and it's super early in the process. It's not even like you're getting an interview. It's like, I'm a recruiter who is going to get you into the queue for maybe having an interview. We go through that process, and there's this 24-hour window for some reason where I'm supposed to hear back. And during that 24 hours, I think was the first panic attack that I ever had physically, and not really having the language for what it was. Just this physical revulsion in my body. I guess that's what physical means. Against this concept of going and like just forecasting this path for myself of like what I was going to be spending the next, if I would accept this job, what the next, year to 5 years was going to look like. And somehow that was so unacceptable in my brain for the first time that it's just like, I desperately need to do anything except for this.
Right.
And with that being the first time I'd ever felt something like that, even through, 5 years of going through this curriculum, knowing and hearing from people in the industry, doing co-ops where I was working in these businesses, I guess maybe there was still that part of me that was holding on to like, this is all going to pass and then I'll get to do the next thing. Now that I was faced with the reality of what this industry would look like, I could not see a path forward. And so I called up this guy, and it felt like a fever dream to just be like, I'm so sorry, take me off the list. And he, it's not going to like change his life. And
right.
There's lots of these hungry little grads swimming out there looking for work at Sam Adams. But I felt like it was so consequential. I'm like, I'm so sorry, like take off. He's like, hey, no harm, no foul. Have a good one. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. And then realizing, okay, this doesn't actually change anything dramatically. Like I could start looking for other jobs, but it felt like a pivotal moment for me of being like, I feel like I've just made a decision to pursue graphic design and art, even though I don't have the credentials, which is really important to me.
Sure.
I don't have like the kind of formal experience that I feel like people would be looking for to take me seriously in this industry or give me a job. I don't know what to do except to maybe just throw everything at the wall, find contacts, people who know about it, try to talk to them. If someone knows someone who knows someone, and also maybe start posting things online. So it being 2014, 2015, I feel like the internet was still somewhat kind to when you wanted to just put yourself out there and get discovered.
For sure.
But I didn't quite know that yet. I think I got very fortunate in thinking that should be an avenue that I pursued as well. as going and trying to find people who knew what they were talking about. So I had the benefit of a lot of just good people in my life. And the thing that my dad reminded me of was that I had gone to him to be like, I need to go back to school. I need to go back to design school right now. And thankfully he was like, all right, we're not gonna make any crazy decisions here. You just graduated. That's like, I think he took me on a personal retreat. Like there's the two of us, and we like read some books, had some discussions, and came up with like an action plan for how to, like, what people to reach out to.
Good dad, man. That's amazing.
I know. It was really sweet of him. And like a lot of people ask this question too, like, did you do engineering because your parents wanted you to? And looking back, the trajectory of our educational life, both my parents, my mom was a teacher when she was younger for elementary school, obviously, and then she homeschooled us for a bit. They both had a pretty strong sense of like, we want our kids to be as well-rounded as possible through their education experiences. For this period of time that they, is set apart in society for you to go to school, they were like, let's get them as much as possible of everything possible. So we went to a charter school for high school that specialized. I mean, it wasn't like that it was particularly a liberal arts charter school, but the English teacher and the humanities teachers there were just so excellent. Like some of my favorite people to this day. And I owe them so much. There's also just like drama club, mock trial, speech classes, things like that, that got us into that creative realm and that liberal arts realm, getting that foundation very strong. And so my parents were like, okay, their high school was very strong at this. We encourage our children to pursue something technical for college, just to finish out that, something that's stronger in the math and the STEM, get that problem solving hat. And then go and do whatever you want, which my older brother, he did computer engineering. He loved computer engineering. And then he proceeded to be a computer engineer for 15 plus years and is now a pastor. So
interesting.
There's a pattern there with our family. Like,
sure.
But my parents are really just like, hey, listen, you don't owe us to go into chemical engineering now that you've graduated. And that's why I think my dad was like, don't do anything rash. Like, don't feel like you have to rush back to school. Let's see what it looks like if you really want to pursue this. Like, I'm not going to begrudge you that you've wasted an education or anything. So very grateful for that support as well.
Yeah.
And then, just had some connections where I was able to go and meet with graphic designers, show them my portfolio of things I'd done over college and in my free time, even with some concept artists too, because that was the other thing. I almost went down the concept art route. I just wanted to do art so bad. And
sure,
I had a great experience where a distant relative who is an executive with EA Games in Vancouver invited me to her house. And she was like, I'm going to show you, like, introduce you to all the people in my network who are concept artists for film, and also these people who are graphic designers. And you can show them your portfolio. We'll have conversation over like the fanciest dinners you'll ever have, because her husband is also just like a crazy good chef. And so he would sit there eating like champagne salmon, and talking about my portfolios. And both of these groups of people, this helped me with my confidence, not so much with my career, where they were like, yeah, dude, you've got what it takes. You just need the experience of doing it. But like,
what do you think
you have the taste?
Yeah. So taste, I think, I had horrible taste starting off in this career, but taste is definitely important. But what do you think it was? What were the other things that you think it was that made them think that you had what it takes? I mean, was it form? Was it, your eye, maybe a knack for composition? In your mind, what were they looking at in your early work that was just like, aha, I got this, or he's got all this potential?
I think part of it was the passion that I had for it meant that I had a ton of output that was somewhat varied, because I wanted it so bad that I was also willing to be like, I can't pigeonhole myself into one style this early in the career. I got to try to demonstrate that I can learn how to make something look like this, but also look like this. I also think, especially from the drawing side, that technical training that I had, there's probably a non-zero component of how like technically rigorous I would be with setting up like drawings and designs. And so, yeah, I think composition ends up being very much informed by that, to look for
Right.
like the order and look for the
Yep.
balance in things, and then create assets that feel like they emphasize. I think that's probably another thing, emphasizing what am I trying to communicate with this piece. Like I had a pretty strong
Yep.
sense of the visual communication aspect, both in the concept art of like this is how I would want a character to look, feel, and be communicated. And then in the graphic design side, obviously to me, number one thing is this accomplishing this invisible brief,
Right.
and is the artwork legible if it's lettering based, or if it's not as legible, is that purposeful? So I think being able to
Sure.
speak to the purposes and to the communication above all else of what each of my pieces were, I think that's what stood out to them.
I think this started probably more around like 2016, 17, but storytelling became like one of the primary goals that most brand houses were really focused on, right?
Yeah.
We started doing storytelling workshops, things like that. And I started using it in like 2014, 15 in my brand studio, and my work just took off, right? It was thinking about it more than just like, hey, this guy needs a cool logo, or, this business needs, a group of illustrations, to sell this. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's a really mature thing that you had growing, early on, that I think really, so if anyone's listening, I guess the thing that I'm thinking to take away from is like thinking more intentionally about what's the purpose of this? What are you trying to communicate? What's the story you're trying to tell with everything that you create, and how important that is to the work.
Absolutely. And even like the persuasive act of, if they don't get it yet, can you at least back it up and be like,
Sure.
this is why I chose this path.
Yeah.
This is why it was, because sometimes that is the game, right? To be like, I know you might not get it now. Hear me out about this. And that can end up, like, if that is good and it is right for the client, that does end up being the winning path to take. But it takes sometimes that persuasion.
Quick break. State of the Union is presented by the Creative Workers Union. We are a community for creative professionals and commercial artists who are trying to make a living without losing themselves in the process. For 13 years, this community has gathered for summit events in Memphis, Seattle, and Brooklyn. This spring, we're back in Seattle for Creative Works West, April 30th through May 2nd at the Cornish Playhouse at Seattle Center. It's 3 days of honest, candid talks about what it's like to be a creative right now, hands-on workshops that sharpen your craft, and real connections with creatives from across the country who know exactly what this roller coaster feels like. No hype, no influencer energy, just people who care about the work. And this year, we've rolled back ticket prices to make sure the right folks are in the room. You can learn more and grab a pass at creativeworks.co/west. All right, back to Dan. What were you looking at? What were you watching? What films? I mean, like, where did this kind of aesthetic and principle come through? Like for me, it's like literally movie posters and music. Yeah. Like those were the things that informed everything I did early in my career. And it wasn't until I really understood, storytelling and purpose and intentionality that my branding and creative career really took off. So what were the earlier things that were kind of molding and shaping you into a person that kind of it already had clicked with? What were you looking at back then?
I want to say that it might have just been, I was such a reader growing up, like to the extent that if there was like a catalog in a place, I was so thrilled to just be sitting and reading that. There was almost nothing that I couldn't find some thrill in reading. And like at some point, I guess there's such a passion for communicating to as this, like, this is my way of accessing the world and letting them access me. Like back and forth.
That's right.
There's a power in this.
Yes.
that I can communicate things that I like or that bring me wonder and joy, but I can also like get that and see how people transmit that to me so well. I want a taste of that. I feel like that was probably a huge driver of that for me. Just that high level, we're transmitting our ideas to each other, and how cool is it that we have this ability to do it in ways that even might be stronger or like grab your attention
Then
first
saying it.
and then you understand it later. Then
Yeah.
it just like laying it all out and working for it. Like I liked that, and I think that's why I love the craft of writing, because it's so hard and you're like chiseling away to like make it work. But then on the flip side, like drawing letters and doing graphic design, it feels almost like a cheat code to, oh cool, I can grab people's attention and then not necessarily Trojan horse a meaning into it, but I can use this first to access the emotions, and then rationally there's a lot of things that can come after the fact.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
No, it does. And I wonder, I mean, a lot of creative people struggle with ADD, or now it's all ADHD. And I wonder if, a lot of people gravitate towards visual communications in that field because they feel more comfortable putting something on paper than they do talking about it. And kind of what I do in every podcast, which is just my brain is thinking about this, and this, and this. And like, how do I bring that home? And visually, especially when you've got the time to do it and the space to do it, the margins to do it, it's not easier, but it's so much more rewarding, I think. And it also speaks, like what you were saying, it speaks to people. It's way more impactful and engaging
Right.
than the spoken word at times. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like there's a whole toolbox of things that we as humans have discovered can transmit our ideas to each other. And I think maybe for me, there was this hunger to be like, what are they? How do I access as many of them as possible? Which are the ones I gravitate towards? Just this hunger to be able to like say things and be understood and be heard, and then have that dialogue through art. And that's happened, which is a thrilling
of course,
thing in life.
Yeah. So I guess back to your career path and things that you're, pursuing. So, I think we're up to the point to where you were posting stuff online, putting things out there.
Yeah.
You were getting advice from people. Where did something connect? When did that first opportunity come up for employment? When did the first opportunity, and then when did the first opportunity come up where you got some sort of kind of acknowledgement and encouragement online where you were like, yes, I'm doing something that resonates with me?
There is a series of murals in Philadelphia. I think it's called Love Letters or something, by Steve Espo Powers. I think he's a New York City based street artist. And the Philly Mural Arts program had commissioned him to decorate some of the, more rundown-ish parts of the city with these incredible, all of them were like lettering based murals. And in one of my co-ops at college, I would take the subway, take the Market Frankfurt, for those who know, and just see these every day on my way to work. And it just opened up my brain to the possibilities. Like, it reminded me of printing fonts out, and copying those and wanting, I think it just reminded me there's so much possibility just with lettering to make art. And so I didn't have to be the best, like, educational artist. Here was a path that I could do things on. So I decided to fill a little notebook with word art posters of my own based on this, and just post them to my personal Instagram. And so I'm doing this while, shuffling through, like, do I need to apply for internships? Should I go back to school? Do I need to talk to more graphic designers?
How old are you at this point?
How old was I?
Yeah.
So I think 23.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have a friend who then tells me, like, hey, Dan, it's cool that you are posting art and stuff, but maybe you want to do that on a different account, because like we just want to follow you for like your photos, which is a hilarious thing to say to somebody ever, but especially like in 2014, like Instagram days. I wasn't offended by it.
Someone was jealous.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, show us your life. We don't need to see your art. So I'm like, okay. I've been hashtagging these Dan-drawn words as a joke of like hand-drawn words. So then I'm like, that's a great name for this account. Let me just do that. So I started that up and started pushing all my lettering art there. I had no idea there was like a lettering community like that lettering as a subset of art and of design was actually a thing that people did. To me, I was just like, hand-drawn words can be on murals and posters. How cool is that? Here's some of what I'm doing on paper. And again, I think the algorithm at the time was very favorable to put me on explore pages or start getting me connected. I started like hashtagging those like aggregation accounts that they had back then, of which now like Good Type is maybe the one that is still out there, maybe because of the way the algorithms have changed. But there were a lot back then, like Type. See, I can't even remember their names, but they had all variations of like Type.
I probably know some of them. Sure, for sure. Yeah.
And I would get like start to get things picked up and reposted there. I would enter some contests. And so there was a narrative there of constantly doing and posting work because I just wanted it. There wasn't really a sense. I just wanted to do it. I mean, and there wasn't a sense of pressure for me at all on that side of things. I didn't think that like my journey into graphic design was going to be supported by creating a robust portfolio of regular work that I am putting out for the world to see, which is what happened. But that wasn't like my grand plan from the beginning of like, if I just
did you have a plan? Did you see yourself 10 years? Like, was there a person? I mean, you're talking about this lettering artist, you know.
Yeah. So I wasn't driven by a very strong sense of who I wanted to be. I think I was driven more by a strong sense of what I wanted to keep doing and what I hoped that I would be able to like produce however it happened. So I'm posting online. I'm starting to gain traction. I remember when I hit my first 1,000 followers and I'm like, yo, this is legit. Like, this is a thing that can happen. Like, this is really, really exciting. And I was like super thrilled about that. And then through there started to meet people in real life. A friend of mine, Eric Friedenson, based in New York City, he was part of like the lettering community that was really strong back then. And he just started like DMing me because he would post some challenges and I would do them, and we got to talking. Then he invited me to like a live art show that he was doing to be like an artist with him. And through that, just meeting a bunch of people, that was a huge, like, opening me up to the idea of there's a community here that you can be a part of. And that was super cool. So that's happening while I'm also starting to post like a portfolio and an online website, posting on, I don't even think I was on Dribbble yet, but I started to get some freelance opportunities. And so building on those, get the opportunity, make a portfolio piece, put it out there, draw, and then apply for internships. That was what I was doing for a while. I got a cool gig doing hand-drawn letters to all the nominees for the YouTube Streamies.
Nice.
And they wanted like colored pencil on Bristol board for this. And so I distinctly remember my mom, because I was living at home, they allowed me to do so. I was like, please let me live at home. Let me do the most millennial thing ever. Take a gap year, brute force my way into graphic design. They're like, yeah, sure. But just be diligent. I remember her walking in as I'm doing these colored pencil letters, and she's like, you're just drawing all day. And I'm like, I know. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm getting paid for this. So that was hilarious. But anyway, got all those. Wasn't hearing too much on the internship front. Thankfully, somebody bit, which was the Chamber of Commerce for Greater Philadelphia. And they serve like a 13 county region. And I was over the moon that there was just at all an internship that's like, yeah, you don't have the credentials, but come on in anyway. So I go, it's this guy and this girl, Nate and Lucy, and downtown Philadelphia, 1 block from City Hall. I'm like, this is legit, dude. I go to the office. We have this interview. It's great. They do amazing work. We have a really fun conversation. I talk them through some of my projects. And then, and so I go home. Actually, I also like left my wallet there and had to go back in when they were interviewing other people, which is so awkward.
Awkward.
So I was like, oh my gosh. Anyway, so I go home. A week goes by. I got a call from Lucy. Lucy tells me, hey, Dan, this is Lucy from the Chamber. You interviewed with us last week. Between then and now, Nate, the other guy, has left the Chamber. We're reorganizing the organization. There's a new marketing director, and we are looking actually for a full-time designer. We thought that we would look at you as a candidate for that if you want to come in and interview for that position. And I remember like covering the like phone thing and doing just like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can make that work. Yeah,
right.
I'd love to.
Let me adjust my schedule.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm sitting there like, what the heck? You know, trying not to forecast like this really means I have a good shot. But at the same time, you know, just being like, don't want this too badly. Okay. Like this is a bigger deal, which means that you might like have less of a shot. I had no idea what's going on. I'm just like, I got to take this chance. So I go and interview the new marketing director. Her name is Anna. Anna and Lucy are interviewing me. Anna brings up the question, like, it's really interesting here looking at your resume that you have a chemical engineering degree, which at that point I realized hadn't come up at all in the previous interview.
Right.
And she's like, but your work is really good. And I just want to know, like, tell me a bit about how you've seen the engineering education inform your graphic design process. And I'm sitting there like, this is a question I was born to give. Like, I don't know how I'd answer it now. I could probably come up with something on the fly, but like I talked them through like a certain project and how I felt there was a crossover, right? Long story short, I got that job. I worked there for 2.5 years. I had talked with Lucy a little bit after I got the job about how, like, when Anna was first looking at the applicants for the role and saw mine, she's like, this guy does not have a graphic design degree. What did you guys talk about in your last interview with him about that? And Lucy was like, it didn't come up. So that takes us to Wyoming by way of like freelance work that's happening. That was another cool thing. Working at the Chamber, Lucy knowing that I was at this stage in my career, they were like, yeah, if you can fit freelance work in and you're getting your work done at the Chamber, go for it.
Yeah.
So
you use the computer there or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, don't like do it on work hours.
Right.
But obviously like get your stuff done. And then we don't really care if you're like at lunch, you know, drawing for another client or something.
Where did you develop, I guess, your sensibilities around, you know, typography and hierarchy and image and all of those things? Because I can only imagine working for a city or a chamber of commerce, you know, most of the graphics that you're going to do are going to be for social media. They're going to be for, you know, newsletter, head masks. They're going to be, you know, and very communicative. What kind of things were you doing as a hand letterer in that first job role? And like, how, did you feel comfortable in it? I mean, did it come quickly? Like, I mean, I learned how to do all that stuff the wrong way. And then I learned by shame. I basically I would show people what I'd done. And then my graphic designer friends would be like, ooh, man, have you ever heard about this thing called kerning? You know, like, and okay. What is kerning? What button?
Ends justify the means, dude. Even if the way it's paid with shame, you get there in the end.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
One of the cool things about the Chamber of Commerce for Greater Philadelphia was that they were so big because they weren't just focused, you know, just like Philly events and blah, blah, blah. They had so many branches that it almost felt like getting the benefits of an agency as well as an in-house at the same time. Because the different departments, there were all these events that they had. Part of Nate and Lucy's philosophy that Lucy carried on was this desire to individually brand all of these things. And so as a young designer, it was a really, really good incubation spot for, there's so much room to explore creatively. You know, you had certain things like the CEO Council for Growth that you stuck with a certain look and feel, but then there were other events that were held. There were other departments that did more fun things, young professionals councils, things like that. And one of my first jobs there was for the British American Business Council, who was on our floor and shared like office space with us as part of the chamber, like affiliate. They were doing an anniversary version of Alice in Wonderland. And Lucy was like, all right, I'm going to teach you InDesign, but also be working on this book cover and just make it as elaborate and hand lettering focused as you want. And I think that got me like AIGA recognition like the next year, which was super dope. But it was like that wide swath of things. We could be working on calendars, brochures, maps, event look and feel, galas. And so that really taught me a lot, I think, on the job of like the professional, like her teaching me the principles of legibility, letting and tracking. What are some baseline ways to make sure things don't look too crowded, etc.
Did they have style guidelines? I mean, I know you're different. You have different audiences within the chamber.
Yeah.
But were there guidelines that kind of helped you kind of not have to navigate too much typography choices and things like that?
The overall branding, there were guidelines there. And then we learned like the in-house style pretty quickly. Like when we knew and Lucy would be like, this needs more white space, like basically that kind of thing. But her taste in that, I think, was so aligned to best practices that it became easier to also see it, like train my eye to be like, oh yeah, this looks better when there's breathing room, when this element gets to stand out. And even so, like, I mean, I think it was a great education for me in how to push the envelope, come up with cool new designs and within the framework and within the parameters of this still needs to have like a form that people fill out for donations at the bottom that you can't get too crazy with. And so the challenge of how do I do that and still make this whole thing feel really cool?
Right.
And all these different ways of solving that.
Do you feel like your work at the Chamber of Commerce there in Philly, do you feel like you made a mark there and you changed kind of how they did what they did and how they maybe continue doing it today? Because I can only imagine, right? So Chamber of Commerce, at least in Memphis, a lot of what they do is very, very corporate. I would assume that they're not engaging with many hand letterers or illustrators to do much of anything, right? And so you get this opportunity to bring in this person who has, hand lettering skills that's kind of pushing the envelope on a lot of things. Like whoever came there after you and kind of what they're doing today, you feel like you changed the creative bar? Did you raise that bar for that company or that organization?
I would like to think so. I don't know if I have any tangible proof, except for two things. One, like I did a vinyl wall mural for them that I think is still there. I'd have to check, but it's like a hand lettered mural. And then the other very funny thing that happened was there was one lunch break where we had this inside joke about the song Lucky by Britney Spears. I don't remember the joke at all, but I remember what happened was I wrote out the lyrics of the entire song on the whiteboard in the back of the office, just like a block, almost like a block mural of the entire lyrics to the song Lucky. And we all had a really good laugh about that. And then I found out maybe 4 years after I had departed and was in Wyoming, a designer who was working at the chamber now hit me up on Instagram and mentioned that whiteboard drawing was still up all those years later. It's like, are you the one who wrote like the lyrics to Lucky on the whiteboard? Because they're still there. And then
you're like, I did it in Sharpie. That's why it's still.
I got commissioned to do whiteboard murals in whiteboard marker at a new building that UPenn was dedicating, because Lucy remembered that I did that at the chamber when she was talking to like the gal who was in charge of the event for UPenn. She's like, oh yeah, I know someone who, funny enough, can do whiteboard murals. So I went and did like 5 floors, each with like their own whiteboard mural as like a job at UPenn, which waitlisted me for chemical engineering, by the way. So Take that, guys.
There you
It
go.
all comes around in the end.
Yeah,
There was a question
I said
you
that.
had.
No,
Sorry.
no. I just said, did you felt like you left it better than you found it, basically,
Oh, yeah.
or left a mark there? And what I'm really getting at, and so working at a chamber of commerce is not the coolest job in the world, especially if you're like internet famous, right? And I won't go into kind of my career, but like when I returned to Memphis, I did a lot of things that weren't very cool at all. They paid the bills. They gave my family and I, health insurance. But the one thread that I really enjoyed in every one of those jobs that I had was that I left it better than I found it. And I set a bar that they maintained afterwards. And I thought that was one of the ways that I felt like I was building something, and something that really stuck with me and created like, honestly, in weird ways, it like created this tension in my work that like, hey, if I can't help you, then I don't want to work with you. Right. And
so like, this is the sign that I should move on.
Yeah, exactly. And so my freelance career after that, there were many conversations that I had with clients and people that I've worked with where it was just like, hey, we've reached a wall. Like, I did this really amazing project for you, and now you're asking me to do all these other things, and it's just, at the end of the day, it's not going to help you that much. And maybe I was selfishly thinking about my own portfolio too in those moments too, just saying, I wanted to push it and do more, but I just remember that time very fondly. I'd done some cooler things when I was younger, and then, but then one of the things I love is like looking back on all the little things that I did before I started doing creative works, really. And I can still see those things in the city. And I literally did leave my mark, like in parks and, institutions and signage and all that stuff. And it's just one of the things I love about being creative and a problem solver and someone who helps do that work, is that and being grateful for it in hindsight, right? Just being grateful that you get to be a part of building the world that you want to live in, right?
It's so funny. That's so much more of the experience that I had when I moved out here to Sheridan, in terms of...
Well, that's a good transition.
Yeah, like places around town. Segue.
Yeah.
The long story, really short, of how I got here, by pursuing like the online, freelance side of things, I got found, it was in a time when I think vector clean icons, and they've never gone away, but I feel like they were the thing, like totally. 2015, 2016.
Yep.
And I was almost staunchly anti that, and not like by principle, but it's just like, I felt so drawn to lettering, first of all, and then to the vintage and the let me prove the humanness of it. So maybe a little bit before my time in that sense, like leaving all of the marks, like showing the pencil and the erasers. And then when I got my iPad, how do I keep it looking marker and paint like? Which got the attention of a small agency out here in Sheridan, Wyoming, called Flood Marketing. And a guy named Brady McLean, who's still one of my dear friends, he hit me up because they were looking for a logo that was more in that style that I was showing than they were finding a lot of, because everything was super clean and they wanted something grungy. So I started working with those guys, kept up that relationship through my time at the chamber. And then when I was looking for the next thing, it coincided with them looking for the next thing, which was to be like looking for a creative director, and talked to my team of mentors. Lucy was one of them. And everyone was pretty aligned, like, hey, this is a season in your life. You're 26. I think I was 26 at the time. If you're going to move across the country at any point, you should probably just do it now. So my best friend, Phil, is the kind of guy who gets a minivan when he's 22. And he's like, I've got a minivan, Dan, and I love road trips. So we loaded up my life in his minivan. We drove out. It was fantastic. So I came here, started working at this agency. A lot of our clients were like through the state of Wyoming. But then on the side too, I started to, being in a small town in Wyoming, you get to know people really fast. And opportunities for local engagement happened very quickly. Between logos and just like chalk and murals and graphic design assistants. And so I've just had my mark now on a lot of the different like businesses in town. And actually, like right after we wrap here, I'm heading back to the CrossFit gym to wrap up a mural that I've been working on for the past week or so.
Nice.
And so, to your point, being able to look around the town and see my marks over time, like the kind of legacy that provides, the kind of fulfillment of like, yeah, maybe this isn't the portfolio piece that gets me in what Fast Company or brand
Right.
new, but I can see this reminder of what was meaningful to me. I know the relationships that are involved.
Yep.
And like the fun that I had or the things that I learned, like you're just surrounded by that. And there's something so fulfilling that almost creates like a protective armor against the paranoia of the digital age, where you just think,
for sure,
that, you know, who, like whether or not my followers are this or that, here's something I was able to do that I can look at and see like every day if I wanted to. And I know that I have a number of these, and it's investing in the place that I call home. And it means that I've made it a little bit better in the direction that I want it to go. And I think that that's a really like, that's a strong thing to have against just the storms of online everything.
Yeah. So let's go on to online. Let's go on to online everything. But before we do that, kind of what do we find you doing today? I mean, you kind of started talking about that, but like you're in Wyoming. How long have you been there?
It's going to be 8 years in March.
Okay.
Which is crazy.
Sheridan, Wyoming, like that. It seems like a place that where is that next to? Like it's either out in the middle of nowhere or it's next to like Yellowstone Park or something like that.
We're about 2 hours south of Billings, Montana, 2 hours north of Casper. So it's very much a hidden gem, and I'm sorry for talking about it. We are nestled in the hills of the Bighorn Mountains, so we get way less wind than most of the state, and it's a wonderful place to live.
When you kind of came onto my radar, you know, putting out these words, you know, there's one of the things that I love about your compositions, and you've already spoken about it too, is just like this human element. And let's talk about this for a second too, because I had so many thoughts while you're talking, but it's like, there's something about your work, especially where you leave your guidelines, I guess. I don't know these terms.
Yeah.
Right. I need to pay more attention to Ken Barber, but like, there's all kinds of things that you leave in your work, right? That would, you know, it's before you would make it vector, or it's before you would take it and redraw it or trace it or whatever. That really speaks to me. And one of the things I was going to say is there's something about hand lettering that is so human that it went away for a while. Then it became trendy. I think maybe it would have been like sign painting would have been kind of the first real commercial use of it, right? And then I feel like it went away because of like vinyl graphics and fonts and all of these things. And then I feel like it came back because of typefaces like Sign Painter and things like House Industries were making. And then there were also a lot of script lettering that came back, I guess, in the late aughts or 2000s, whatever they call that. And but now it's had a huge resurgence. It really, like within that second decade of the 2000s, the 2010 to 2020, it had this huge resurgence.
Yeah.
But, and I think the thing that, at least that I think of with it, is that it's so human. It's not perfect. It's an organic form. You have to fit these letters into certain things, and like Ken would do it one way, you would do it one way, and none of these ways are wrong, right? It kind of lands itself at preference.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's like no two compositions are going to be the same. And so there's something about hand lettering that I think will last as a craft. I think and I even saw someone that created these t-shirts today that they were hand lettered, that were totally AI, right? Like they were just done with AI, because now AI can letter. What is it about hand lettering that just is really, I mean, yes, there are commercial uses for it. There's ways to use it. But I think the reason why so many people gravitate towards it as an art form and love it or like it or want to employ it is because I think it's one of the best expressions of humanity and communication, you know, all of
You hit
those
the
things.
nail on the head right there. I think that's honestly what is most compelling to me about it is the inextricable humanity of it. Like you look at that and you can't question that a human was like involved in the making of it. Not that there's really anything that just self-generates, you know, like a sign that is typeset very nicely out in the wild. But I think it's almost, if somebody looks at that and knows I could type that versus, wow, like I think it's the sense of wonder that continues to go away with all of the tools that we give ourselves. Not that we should, because I think in my hand lettering journey, the funny thing is I think it gave me a fresh appreciation for just the everything that we have in terms of making marks and communicating with each other. COVID was huge for this. Like honestly, one of the most inspiring things for me, ironically, in the hand lettering space in my mind was in COVID when everybody had to create their emergency like COVID protocol signs. Everywhere that you went, the things that people had to put on their windows and their doors, from like a hand typed Times New Roman font to somebody like scratching something together with a whiteboard marker, there was something that was so compelling to me about humanity's response to crisis with the tools that they had available that just like filled me with such like renewed passion for the craft.
That's awesome, man. I never even thought about that, but you're so right.
Right?
I mean, we saw that everywhere.
I think what was so fun, right? Fun is a strong word. What was so compelling was you'd see a place that was like massively corporate, everything dialed visually to the gills. And then there on the door is some like third shift person who had to handwrite in Sharpie what their COVID protocol was on the door. And that sense of like, let's remember that we're people, and all of these great machineries that we have set up for ourselves lack the ability to do the same thing as us talking to each other with the tools at our disposal, whether we're typing it out, whether we're writing it out. And when it was almost like a refreshing of the mission statement for me of like, yeah, this is what it's all about. This is about creating artifacts for each other to get the point across.
Yeah.
And it's not that they have to, like, you don't need like a Starbucks branded poster to say, please social distance yourself to get that point across. You can have like the barista write it out on a piece of paper. And like anytime that it is branded or something else, it's like, are we remembering what is the point of that? And how does that serve the ultimate message? So anyway, that's kind of my philosophical rant of hand lettering. To me, it's like you're taking words. Everyone's so used to words. We're typing them all day. We're reading, we're scrolling. How do you make people look at them fresh? How do you take something and really like stop people in their tracks to think about what the word means all over again? G.K. Chesterton has a fantastic little like essay about the role of fairy tales in the world. And one of the lines that I love the most, I'm going to paraphrase, it's like, in fairy tales, rivers run with wine so that we can remember that they run with water. And it's like that perspective, like everything should amaze us. Life is wonderful, and humans all the more so with our various complexities and the things, the inner worlds that we have that we're trying to get out there. And any time that we can make that magical little connection of like bringing people back to wonder about all of those things, I mean, that's my craft.
Dude.
Like, I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm tearing up at that quote about the wine in the river. And
isn't it so good? It's so good.
Yeah. And it's like, I want to stay there for a second, but I didn't mean to interrupt you earlier, but I just was thinking to myself, like, how many times have we gone to a store or a restaurant and seen a sign that was created with a computer and just completely ignored it? Right.
Right.
I mean, but some, like you said, some third shift worker just wrote something, had no knowledge of hand lettering. It's probably kerned all this shit, probably looks horrible.
You might even
but
laugh
like
about
will stop you. Yeah. And it will stop you in your tracks. You will read it because you know that there's some sort of, here's what it is. You know that it meant something to someone, that they had to do it with their hands.
Yeah.
Right. It meant enough, I guess, is the right way to say that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you get with hand lettering. Like, it means something. I mean, it's like anytime you work with a hand letterer, you can't just give them a whole bunch of fucking words. They're going to figure out how to distill it to its the best parts. And I love working with hand letterers and then them basically saying no until I get it right. You know, like I can't remember who it was. Like, I've pitched so many things to so many people that do hand lettering, but I think it was like Jessica Hish or something that like in a very Jessica Hish way, like responded back to me like, well, that's one way, you know, like, you know, and it just like, it never went anywhere after that, so you know,
funny.
Like that's one way to do it or something like that. Right, but she doesn't mean it in a like a mean way, obviously, but it's it's just that in her mind, she's got to find the best way to communicate that so it's worth her time to letter it. And it's like that time and intention have to be present
for the best
to spend that time on it. Yeah. Whether we know it or not, I think it's just another reason why the populace loves it. Like, one of the things I cannot stand here in the Deep South, and I'm sure it's everywhere else, but there are these typefaces that I think have been co-opted by craft people.
Oh no!
You know, burlap at some point was a part of that culture too, and like there's a bunch of, you go into someone's house and there's like crosses everywhere on one wall, and then it's like, yes. I don't know. I mean, and I know people do hand letter that stuff too, but it's now so prescriptive, or it's done
the sort of Hobby Lobby, for lack of Hobby Lobby aesthetic is probably what I need to call it. Cause I don't know of any place that is a more like stronger evidence of you walk in and you see that aesthetic at play, of especially like hand-drawn looking fonts saying things and slogans that have become like synonymous with this more like kind of a trite or overused or unconsidered. It evokes a similar feeling of seeing something that was hand lettered, but it lacks the soul of it. And it's hard to put your finger on exactly why, except for the fact that it's like, you know, it is a mass produced commodity that instantly generates a temporary emotional response. And that's what I think so much of modern culture, I want to say American culture, it might be worldwide, we've sort of come to settle for that, like, as what we get to have, you know?
Dude, yes. Like, I want to get so fired up right now. I love how you can say that just so, not emotionless, like, but you're so like just level-headed, but I get so fired up about this. But I mean, I'm sure it's like this in Wyoming where you're at. It's definitely like that in Memphis.
Especially the cowboy stuff, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I just didn't know any better, right, until I moved away. Even I lived in Orlando, Florida for a bit, and I lived in Nashville for a bit. When I moved to Seattle and I started hanging out with people who actually had taste. And what I mean by that too is like they had an eye developed from things that they were looking at in the past, right? Like, so a lot of my friends were really into like mid-century modern typefaces. They were into the artists that created those typefaces. And so we developed a style and an aesthetic and principles around craftsmen and women that were like doing this, the Eames, you know, like, like everything was very storied, right? And it had a past, it had a function, it had principles, all of these things. And then we were using those or trying to use those in our commercial work. But then here in Memphis, and like my mom's house is this way. My mom probably listens to this, and sorry, mom,
Love
but
you, mom.
yeah, love you, mom. But she goes to a Tuesday mornings or I don't think they have those here anymore, but like she goes to a place and she's just trying to fill a corner in her, a place on her shelf or a corner in her
Right.
room, right? And so instead of thinking about, what does that mean to me, right? It's just
Hmm.
like, oh, well, there's this thing that looks like an old lantern. Well, I'm going to put that on the shelf.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's just, it's a weird way, but just, it's consumption. It's just like, we got this blank space. And in my mind, which is maybe the flip side of that, like if you walk through my house, we rarely have anything on the walls because I want to put things up in my house that mean something.
Right,
Right.
right, right.
And right now we don't have the money to just like throw a bunch of shit on the walls. And so I refuse to do it. And so we have a lot of blank walls in our
Sake of
house.
doing it. Right.
Yeah, of course. But I think as Americans, I think that's what we're chasing what we're seeing online, right?
Right.
Primarily, and what we're seeing, by people who make so much more money than we do, right?
Because
Because
they
it's
understand
just,
this impulse and the magic of it. Yeah.
yeah, well, they've got the money to spend on it, right? And so people just see that kind of, and they're mimicking that, or
Hmm.
they're wanting their lives to be similar, right? And so you start seeing other people's lives that are curated in this way, but it's really focused more on like consumption than like what's meaningful to me. And again, I'm and not to say that anything is wrong about. I mean, I think mass consumption is something that Americans need to look at in the way we view like consumption
Yeah.
in
Like take a
general.
breath, consider it as
Yes.
opposed to be on autopilot. I think that's the issue.
Yeah.
And I
I mean,
think
even like, go ahead.
that's going to open a whole can of worms with AI in my mind. But I think that that explains so much why the question of like, why did AI come for the creative stuff before it came for the drudgery of something to do my taxes for me? And
Yeah.
it's because one, the power of art to evoke emotion, but two, the immense commodification of that emotion and of the ability to evoke emotional response via visual unconsidered product. Like we all know how, even though it continues to get better, AI's was able to come out the gate and have the success it did when it got to a certain level of good enough. Like it was mockable
Yep.
first, then it got to good
Right.
enough, and it was still. Um, it's crazy to be speaking in past tense too, because this is just like yesterday. It feels like
2 days ago. Yeah.
when you look at the thing, and you're like, oh, see, like how the windows have no logic and it blends in. But at that point, it was already inevitable that it was going to take over, the Hobby Lobbies of the world and the mass consumption, because all people are looking for is not like an expertly done painting of something. They are looking
Right.
for the feeling of looking at something that feels like mountains that maybe I've seen, because this is kind of a mountain home that I'm putting together as a concept, and it's going to convey this for 2 seconds. And that's all the attention that I have to expend on it, and all the attention that I want it to provide for me in the future. And I think that's why, like, the aesthetics, like, if it can get approximate enough, that's what we've decided to settle for collectively. And that is why I think there is the explosion of, like, it wouldn't be an explosion if people weren't into it, and people are into it because that's what we've all decided we're good for.
Yeah, I mean, we could end this conversation right there. I think that's a really strong way to articulate that. I always think about it in a sense of like, I walk into a lot of folks' home and they feel like an Airbnb,
Yeah.
which is just like, it's just detached from your reality, right? Like it's
Yes.
nice and there are things there. And sometimes you have these really amazing houses that have really great things, but like there's nothing that really speaks to you about
Hmm.
it, right? So it
It's as
feels,
average as possible.
yes, yes. And even nice stuff, like it's still detached from you in some weird way, shape, or form. But kind of back to your thoughts on AI. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day too, is like, why did it come for that creativity first? And it's because there was an incredible amount of value to an artist's work and
Yeah.
a cost and an expense there, right? And so instead of what we were all sold, when AI was conceptualized, which is it's going to support the work, it's going to help you work less, it's going to help you do more. It really it came for creative work first, sadly, and I think you can see why. I think it's because these companies who don't want to pay for creative workers, and again, we could talk about that at length, but like these companies who don't want to pay for creative workers have put this thing out into the world, and we're all leveraging it for visuals. And,
Right.
I'm sure that there was a time. Totally. But I bet there was a time where, AI had never thought about a logo or hand lettering. And then people were like forcing it to do that long enough to where now it does something that's
Congratulations,
passable.
you're trained. Yeah.
Yes. And again, at the end of the day, it's because we just want so much and we can't take that breath and think about well, wait a minute, whose job are we replacing? Whose, livelihood are we just completely getting rid of at the moment? And the nice thing to remind ourselves about as creatives is that I don't see much of that work or that AI work actually replacing any creative work. What I see it doing is either creating more work on the tail end to edit it down to something that's passable, or I see it supporting the conceptualizing of greater work afterwards by creatives. But bosses don't know that difference. We do, because we're creative and we know how to curate, we know how to edit, we know how to finish something or whatever. But bosses just think to themselves, oh, well, I'm going to get rid of our marketing budgets and our creative budgets, or half them or whatever, so that I can make more money and keep our stock price in a failing economy, either stabilized or still growing. Sorry to get all, but I think about those things all the time.
No, for sure, man. And I think it's what you're talking about is like a period that we're going to go through, and it might be for a while. I think to the extent that if we do know that it's just an averaging machine at the end of the day, eventually there's nothing that people are better at than spotting patterns ultimately, and we'll eventually get sick of the patterns. But I think it'll be a long time because it keeps evolving. It still feels very new for a lot of people to encounter things with the kind of grammatical integrity that it can generate, that comes across as expert level writing, when really it's, once you recognize it, I'm sick of the internet right now, because it feels like 80% of the words out there are run through ChatGPT.
Yep.
And there is a specific argumentative style that it uses, even when you try to prompt it to not, that eventually becomes so recognizable that it's just tiresome. As soon as I see it in something, I check out. My brain just, it's like, oh shoot, I've been wasting a few seconds. So
well, and the other thing that I think is really interesting, and I wonder if it's intentional, is that we're, so many creative studios or creative practices or freelancers or companies, whatever, on such tight budgets that when we would want to hire a copywriter, it just, our ability to do that just doesn't exist. And so we are forced in ChatGPT. So it's creating,
sorry, go ahead.
It is. No, totally. It's creating this dynamic that's feeding it. And, the people who are benefiting are not us. We're exhausted. The consumers in general are exhausted, and it's benefiting those that built the thing. But I don't know if you're, who's listening to this, but I invested some money last year on this thing called the Circle app, or Circle platform for communities. And I thought it was going to be a place to create memberships and post content and, news, workshops, sell tickets, I thought it was going to be the next thing. And what I learned really quickly was it was just one more thing. And people were like, yeah, okay. but
Right.
we've got enough, man. We don't want one more thing. And it's not that the content's not valuable. It's just that like logging on to one more thing to get this thing is just not, I think people are tired of it. They're exhausted of it. And so I think it was this morning or maybe it was yesterday, I sent out a message just saying, hey, we're not going to use this platform. We're abandoning this. I'm abandoning it months before it gets shut off. And I want to go back to like a newsletter, like something that comes out regularly that you can digest in your own way or on your own time, that you can take the time to read. Now, maybe we're so tired that we won't even do that. That's where I feel like that's where the rub gets, right? We went to these really short attention spans because of the scroll. But,
and then we were taught that you needed to play the game to stay relevant. But I think what we're relearning is that the things that have been true will remain true. And it's not like we're going to evolve humanity to a point where certain principles are going to be like completely overridden by the excitement of new technology. I think there's a lot of value, a lot of like short-term value if you're someone who's able to capitalize on something happening exciting, but it's never like the lasting play.
Totally, man. I mean, what you said, the truth remains. I mean, that's something that has to be thought about a lot by a lot of people. Sadly, because of our need to make money, we can't think about that enough, right? We're always going to have this anxiety about what's the next opportunity for me to sell a ticket.
What do I need to learn now? What do I need to do?
Yeah. How do I get my resume from LinkedIn to an actual person that back in the day you would just call a company, right? And then and you'd have a relationship, and that relationship, like, your relationship to Lucy would get you work at Penn or, get you up to Wyoming or whatever. But we're playing this game, and the sad thing is that the game is really not working, right? Like the algorithms on Instagram and LinkedIn are not turning, I don't know the words, but the engagement on those things, we've lost a lot there.
Yeah.
The same type of, even when you pay for it, you don't get the same level of engagement you got just a few years ago.
In shitification. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So, God, man, I could stay here all day, but I recently a lot of people have been blaming AI for the current situation. And I don't think that's really where the blame lies. I think the blame lies in the people who are leveraging AI, right? And I wish that we all had enough stamina, endurance, savings, literally, to like remain true to this craft, because I do believe that it's going to win out in the end, and people are going to look at AI and general, what do they call it? General AI or
generative AI?
Generative AI. Sorry, forgive me. I'm the worst with words, but like generative AI as plastic, and like like I feel like it's going to feel I mean, it already does, right? Like you look at a funny video and you laugh your ass off on Instagram, but like there's nothing that's telling a real story that really keeps you sucked into that. I've said this before, I think on the podcast, but like my 14-year-old who's really creative, who plays guitar, who listens to music from like the early 2000s, I've said to him multiple times, what do you think about this track? It was completely generated in AI. And on its face, it's really cool. Sounds great. He has zero interest in it. And everything that I read about young people is that they kind of feel like the world around them is fake already, and they're craving that real. And so I think that in this weird way, my hope is that AI is actually forced to support us, not replace us. And
there won't be the demand for the replacing.
That's right.
At that point.
Because it's not that experience, that experience will never be as good until we turn our brains off or get plugged in, right? Like the thing about hand lettering, or I was discussing this with Nathan, our latest podcast, DK&G. Like, there's something about building a house and living in it and noticing the imperfections that make you think of that time. Oh, that's where that guy dropped the fucking drill on my floor, or that's where sorry, that happened to me, but like, that's where I tried to do the grout and man, I screwed that up, or whatever it is. Like, and there's something about that tells a story that just cranking something out or prompting something out doesn't do the same thing. And I think it's what we ultimately long for, every one of us, especially today. Again, we're told that AI is the future. We're told that if we're not using AI, we're being naive about what's happening or what's coming. I just was listening to Scott Galloway on some like Davos podcast that he was doing with another world leader or economic leader from some other country. And, he was just talking about, like, everyone's just talking about AI. That's all that we're talking about. And America in particular just seems so like consumed with being like assholes about like where we're going, and we're going there no matter whether you want to go, and unprincipled about it and so rude about it. And it's just I think it's just like Mark Zuckerberg and like all those guys, right? Like, it's just like startup leaders that have a ton of money that are just trying to get everyone to buy in on this Ponzi scheme or whatever. And I'm speaking way out of my depth, by the way, but just
the amount of money that industry is losing and needs to shore up by getting investors to believe that it's going to actually turn around is insane.
And it's changed. It's already changed our culture already. So I feel like the thing is that, like, you've already said this, but like in some ways, like, AI is inevitable, right? It's not going to go away. We're not going to be able to advocate our way out of it. Right. It's just going to happen. But as humans, we can all decide, like, just like some of us have, like, some of us don't shop at Target anymore. Some of us don't shop at Amazon. Some of us only support small businesses. Some of us participate in blackout days. Like, we're going to have to make decisions about convenience and that impact on the rest of society, whether you think American society, your local community, or globally. We're going to have to make those decisions. And I think that my hope is that, sadly, we got to go through it to get on the other side of that.
Totally.
And to see the suffering,
it's
if
like
you will.
Chocolate is really good when you're eating it, but you eat too much of it, you get sick. Like, anything like that, that's like the convenience. I think what we will be discovering is, like, lasting creativity is incompatible with convenience, which anyone who's had to, like, chop through a difficult brief or do a really cool project knows this. It doesn't come fast. And like, you might have trained your instincts to expedite the process, but there's a process that's involved. And I feel like that lines up so well on the one hand of, like, convenient things are destroying us, and then inconvenient things are the answer. Things like even as you're talking about, like, LinkedIn and the algorithms that we have, the convenience of that is like eating its own tail. Like, the AI, it creates AI interview or resumes that go to AI resume readers, and so no one is doing anything, and it comes back around to the old inconvenient adage of, like, it's who you know. Like, I would argue that the majority of people that I've interacted with in the past 1 to 2 years, especially, who have done any kind of career transitions successfully, it's been because of a personal network, not because of the blasting out and trusting these things that promised to be the machine that solved it all. By being the machine that solved it all, it became the machine that got overwhelmed with its own slop. Everything from, like, Uber to Airbnb to, Amazon. I just feel like all the great promises, funny enough, like, looking back to the 2014 kind of era, the golden days of the startup will save us, the great millennial hope of the, like, 2010s, the 2020s have almost definitively proven that that's just not going, like, They're continuing to be a part of our life. They're going to be okay, but that's never going to be the pinnacle of the excellence and the quality or the stability that you're looking for. It's not going to come from trusting that these great new technologies are going to come in and save it. It's going to be the same old dirty, getting your hands in the mix, meeting with people in your community, building relationships and cultivating them over time. It's going to, like, it just works, and it will always work.
Yeah, it will remain true. Hey, man, this has been a great conversation. One of the things I just encourage you guys is to go look at Dan's work online. What is your handles for Instagram for your hand-drawn words?
That would be Dan Drawn Words.
Okay.
DANDA.
That's right. Yes.
Nope, I already misspelled it. DANDRAWNWORDS.
Nice. Yeah, it's really amazing. Dan is going to be at Creative Works West doing a workshop, a 3-hour in-person, 30 people, 30 students max workshop on hand lettering composition. We'll be announcing those tickets next month, and just wanted to, I don't know when this will air. Maybe it'll be on sale by then. But yeah, really excited to actually hang with you in person, man. I think it's going to be really fantastic.
Fun, man.
And Dan, like other people at the conference, are the kind of people you want to be around during these times. Thank you for your time, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it, dude. Good times.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to State of the Union. If you are looking for a community that cares about craft, real-world impact, and responsibility more than chasing trends, come hang with us this spring in Seattle at Creative Works West. The registration link is in the show notes. Got a story about a win, a setback, or a shift that you're navigating in your own creative career? Send it to stories@creativeworks.co. I would love to hear it and maybe share it on a future episode. State of the Union is produced by the Creative Workers Union, hosted by Josh Horton, and edited by Sydney Gladue. Until next time, keep showing up, focus on your craft, and remember, you're not alone.